Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku couldn't handle being Spider-Man alone? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Nah, you're all wrong. Spider-Man does more for this city than any of these idiot cops ever have. The familiar voice of my childhood best friend and classmate, Katsuki Bakugo, Kaken, reaches my ears despite him being all the way on the other side of this noisy cafeteria. Perks of being bitten by some mutated lab spider, super hearing. To my great dismay, a flush heats my cheeks at his unintentional praise of me. He'd never be saying those things if he knew who was actually under the mask, of course, but I'll appreciate it personally anyways. I return my attention to the riveting discussion of Spider-Man versus the Brooklyn PD, where the seniors of UA High are debating who is better for our city. It's pretty evenly and predictably divided. Lovers of normalcy and rules are for the cops. People like Tenya Ida and Momo Yaoyorozu are 101% on the side of the keepers of the law, while people like Kyoka Jairu and Mina Ishido are pro-Spider-Man all the way. Some of my Spider-Man's more unexpected supporters have been Katsuki Bakugo and Nito Monoma, both stuck-up rich kids whose parents benefit from the current system. Shockingly, they both hold a strong bias for their green spider hero, defending him at every turn and opportunity. They'd both reel if they knew they were really defending and supporting Deku. We shouldn't be placing our full trust in some mysteriously anonymous hero who showed up out of the blue, above the real heroes who have protecting us for years. Kaken scoffs, cutting off Ida's rant and waving his hand dismissively. Your opinion doesn't count, for eyes, you're brainwashed by tradition and all that bullshit. He mutters, drawing an exasperated groan from Momo. I hear Kirishima chuckle fondly. What Bakugo means to say is that this manly spider dude has managed to lower crime rate by a lot in the few months he's been active, something the cops haven't been able to do in decades. Vigilante or not, he's doing tons of good deeds. No hate, just the truth. The red-haired jock explains good-naturedly. Mina nods, her pink hair falling in her face as she leans on her blocky boyfriend. Yeah, Tenya, the dude is awesome and stylish. She beams. Well, his suit could use some more FING flair, but yeah. Kaken snips over her. I struggle not to roll my eyes as Ida sighs. Of course the pretentious fashion student would be caught up on something as silly as my costume. I suppose you're right, but there are no buts, dipshit. Kaken groans in irritation. All the people who are against Spidey are just sheet for brains who are terrified of change. He grumbles. As much as I hate to agree, Bakugo is right. Monoma sighs, chin in his palm as his fingers drum lazily against his jaw. The chief of police is a brute, and Spider-Man is cool. It's not difficult to say who is better for Brooklyn. I glance over my shoulder curiously, finding the large group all staring at each other tensely. I chuckle lightly to myself, zoned out as I focus my hearing on Midoriya. A loud voice snaps in my ear. I yelp, nearly toppling over in my chair as Ochako glares at me spitefully from across the table. I stare at her in bewilderment, ears ringing from being screamed at while my hearing sensitivity was dialed to W. I cry, looking around in confusion as my friends stare at me. Ochako sits back in her seat, rubbing her eyes with her fingertips and huffing in exasperation. I find that the rest of the table is fighting off smiles and staring at their food, amused by my scatterbrain. We asked you 3 times if you could hear us, but you kept mumbling to yourself. Todoroki points out, staring at me intently from his seat beside Ochako. I scratch my cheek nervously, smiling as I wave it off. I've really got to stop thinking out loud. Sorry, I was zoned out. I shrug, the back of my neck prickling as I feel eyes on me. I push the food on my tray around as I gnaw my lip, intuitively knowing that the piercing stare can belong to no other than a certain gloomy blonde. I shake my head in an attempt to distract myself. He's probably just looking in this direction, not at me. Something that's caused a bit of an issue for me is the fact that Todoroki's father is the chief of police here in Brooklyn. Initially I worried that would make Shoto dislike me, Spider-Man, since his dad is so anti-vigilante, but the guy hates his dad with a passion, only really gets into conversation with vigor when it comes to bashing Enji Todoroki. If anything, he'd be adamantly pro-Spider-Man just to spite the chief. I sigh, glancing up at my friends. So, what do you guys think about this Spider-Man person? I prompt nervously. While Spider-Man himself isn't a new presence, the traction he's been gaining is. I've been swinging around at night on the DL, but lately my interactions with crime have been a little more flashy than I'd like. It's not awful that I'm being talked about more, but it does SCK to hear my alter ego being bashed and debated at every turn. Shoto smirks, a rare sight for him, and sets his cutlery down. I think he's great. He gets his job done with respect and consideration for the people, way more than the police have been doing this year. He sneers spitefully. I press my lips together and nod. Expected that. I don't really understand all the hype, honestly. Sue hums from beside me. He's cool and heroic and all, but the police are reliable and they should be given priority in crime situations over a spider boy. She croaks out. I inhale through my teeth gently, trying not to correct the name like a try-hard fanboy. I glance up again as Shinso clears his throat, an unexpected contribution. The purple-haired boy, much like his father, is a tired and mellow personality. It's rare to get anything more out of him than a sleepy nod or grunt, maybe a snarky comment on a good day. It's Spider-Man, Sue, he corrects with a smirk, and I dunno. Crime's gone down a whole lot since he's been on the streets, even my dad has noticed. He points out lazily, chin propped up by his palm. Plus his suit is super sweet. May chimes in, waggling her eyebrows at me knowingly. My eyes fly wide as I kick her under the table, heart racing as she giggles. True, I do love his suit design. The green really stands out. Ochako nods, chewing on a bite of pizza. I fight off a blush at the compliment. Hatsum May is the only person ever to know that Spider-Man and I are one and the same. After I realized that my silly makeshift suit of a green hoodie and ski mask was not effective, I came. Crawling to her on my knees and begged for assistance. Now I've got her baby, Almi. Yes, my suit is named after my favorite comic book character. It's made of a fire-resistant spandex with built-in tech and wiring to help control my webs, as well as modify my voice. May and I worked on it for weeks, and now the stylish tech is my trademark. The slightly scary pink-haired girl is convinced that her gorgeous suit is what led to my sudden rise in popularity, but I'm not convinced. If I really put my mind to it, I might have been able to create the suit on my own. Unfortunately, no matter how talented I am in engineering, Hatsum is far better. None of us have a chance compared to that borderline obsessive girl. When she gets locked on a project, she barely sleeps until it's completed to perfection. While I do admire that about her, the fact that her idea of perfection is held to such a high standard means that it took a bit longer to finish the suit than I'd initially hoped. All this started on a field trip mock tour of Shimura Labs, where I got carried away by all the modern tech and freshly developed mechanics and wandered off on my own. Interesting to take in-depth notes for studying later on. Looking back, it was dumb to isolate myself from the group while inside such a progressive, experimental place, but I ended up stumbling into some wacky testing room filled with arachnids and getting bitten by a neon green spider who I've come to call Minimido. A few months later, here we are. I've got no clue what those things were made for or what the purpose of their existence was, but there was no record of experimental insects or anything in Shimura Industries that would explain what happened to me. Midoriya, time for class. Sue prods me gently, staring at me with concern as she pushes her long green hair out of her face. I jump and quickly gather my things, brushing off the worried stares of my friends and rushing to 5th PRD. So, Zuku, how are you holding up? May prods at my cheek, peering at me suspiciously. I sigh and shoo her away, stretching my arms over my head with a yawn. The two of us are in UA's elite engineering lab, filled with expensive tech like massive 3D printers and robotic helper arms to aid students in more precise projects. I dropped by the lab after school ended because May wanted to fix a small bug in my suit's voice mod system before deeming it complete. We tried working at it together, but she quickly determined that I was just in her way. May plans to major in engineering at Cornell, while I intend to focus more on robotic science and genetic research at the same school. I'm fine, holding up as well as I can. Thanks again for, making me my dream suit. I smile genuinely. She waves her hand with a shrug. No biggie, I'm happy to be making gear for a real hero. She beams, although, I'm shocked you haven't even told Todoroki or Uraraka about this whole bug thing yet. She hums, using tiny tweezers to apply tape to keep a certain bundle of wires flat against the inner fabric of my mask's neck. I twist my lips up to the side, guilt racking through me. Under different circumstances, my two best friends would be the first people I'd tell. I know they'd support me and they'd never snitch, but I also know that they'd worry and stress too much. Not to mention that Shoto's father is literally the chief of police, and keeping that kind of secret from his dad, the man actively working with journalists to uncover my identity, would be too difficult a thing for me to ask of him. Not to mention what might happen if they tried to help me in my evil-busting hobby. If they got tangled up, they'd be liable in more ways than one, and if there's anything I won't allow, it's my friends getting caught up in my web. Metaphorically. Knowing this would only put them in danger, both legally and literally. I sigh. She quirks a brow, taking a step back from the wires and leaning back against her work table. How so? She inquires. Well, you know about Shoto's dad. I begin to list the reasons off on my fingers. Any association with me could lead to issues in their near future, especially getting into the colleges they want. They'd both inevitably want to help me in any way they could, and that could lead to someone getting hurt. I already feel bad for coming to you with my suit, because it could bring controversy onto you and your work when you have such a promising future dash. She holds a finger to my lips with an eye roll, flipping her dreads off her shoulder and tooting. You worry too much, Midoriya, she sighs. I doubt that any controversy over me helping out a hero will impact how awesome my babies are, and that's all that really matters. Either way, how would anyone find out it's me helping you? I purposely didn't tag my name on any part of this thing. She points out. I gnaw on my inner cheek as she hunches over the table again, using a tiny smoldering tool to weld some tiny bits of wire together. You're right, yeah, but dash, no buts, tuts, or coconuts. She cuts me off harshly. I am choosing to help you because I want to. If anything should somehow happen to me because of that, then it will have been my own doing because I am choosing to help you. She powers through, eyes squinted to see her work better. I sigh, sliding my hands into my pants pockets. If I were you, I'd have run for the hills by now. I mutter. Running is for pussies with no talent or passion. When I start a project, I see it through to the end. I recoil in shock at her sudden vulgarity, a smile of amusement tugging on the corners of my lips. Well, you know, this isn't something with a definite end. Who knows how long I'll keep crawling to you for repairs? I remind her. A grin splits her face, almost creepy in intensity as it lights up her eyes and spurs her careful movements. That's what makes this project so fun, though. She shrugs. I sigh, dropping the attempt at getting her to back out and just watching her work silently. May is an odd duck, that's for sure. In elementary school, she was always the little girl running around with a worm on a stick, chasing the boys until they cried. She would thrive in art, drawing up random gadgets and even making popsicle stick prototypes before she moved on to learning how to code and get computer savvy. While being a little odd, she has top grades and dozens of schools begging for her attendance. Is the compaction feature working well? She mumbles in the zone. I beam at the mention. She designed my suit to shrink down into a little green. All might keychain when it's not on my body, and all I've got to do to put it on is hold it to the center of my chest and press down on the figure's head. Now that is something I couldn't have done on my own, and I've honestly got no clue how she pulled it off. She refused to tell me, calling it her secret weapon. Oh my God, it's been a lifesaver. It's so convenient to not have to take 5 minutes to change every time I come across a crime. I gush, nearly bouncing in excited gratitude. She smiles wider, ambition flowing off her as she works on her masterpiece. Exactly. So don't break him. She glares menacingly. After another 30 minutes, she presents her finished work to me with pride, reminding me to come to only her with repairs since it's generally unique and personalized tech before kicking me out and telling me to get some sleep. I stuff All Might back on my keys and make my way to the subway, my feet carrying me on muscle memory as my mind wanders. I really should practice more with controlling my webs. That was the hardest thing to come to terms with, webs shooting from my wrists. It was so gross at first, and it's impossible to get them off your clothes, harder to explain to your mom what they are when she tries to wash your laundry, but I semi-got the hang of it. It's a matter of the angle you bend your wrist at and controlling the speed they come out at, then you're golden. Okay, well I'm mostly golden because May worked a web distributing aid into the wrists of my suit, helping me control the web consistency and moderating the amount that comes out. But I'll figure out how to do that on my own soon. Aiming is a whole different story, and I've got naturally shaky hands so it makes it harder to hit exact targets unless I'm really focusing. Mommy! I spin around from where I wait for my train, eyes landing on a sleazy man in a black hoodie sprinting away from a shrieking woman with a small child tucked under his arm, bolting through the shocked crowd. I grit my teeth and glance around before subtly activating All Might, the green suit stretching snugly over my body before darting forward and easily keeping up with the man and the sobbing girl as he exits the crowded underground. He glances over his shoulder and curses under his breath, dodging the first web I shoot his way and skirting around a corner. I groan and swing myself into the air, watching him through the alley and following him quietly until he lets his guard down, snapping at the crying child in his grasp to shut up. I drop down behind him, nose wrinkling at the smell of rotting trash and dust in the city's crevice. Hey there, sir, I don't think she belongs to you. Oh, whoa. I dodge his hand as he flashes a gun at me, shoving the girl to the ground. Spider freak. He spits, shakily aiming the small pistol in my direction. Well, that's not very nice. I grumble. I shrug my shoulders and dart forward, going to take out his knees when he jumps out of the way and slams the butt of his gun into the back of my skull. I wince and stumble, giving him enough time to dive on top of me and aim the gun at my face and oh shit I'm gonna get shot. Anyway, a-hole. My whole body tenses at the familiar voice. Suddenly the man is distracted, only briefly, but long enough for me to grab at him, forcing the gun from his hand with a sickening crack as I, accidentally, break his wrist. He shrieks, rolling on the floor and clutching his arm to his chest. I grimace. Oops, I whisper, glancing up at the person who called out before moving to check on the girl. Wait, blonde hair? I spin on my heel, locking gazes with red eyes as the breath is knocked out of me. He's staring intently, not giving away any thoughts, just watching. Kakin just stands there, body sweaty and chest heaving, clearly having been on an evening jog based on his tennis shoes and tank top. I hesitate, but quickly move to comfort the crying girl on the floor. Hey, sweetie, it's okay. You're safe, I'm Spider-Man. You hurt. I croon, giving her a once-over. She stares at me with wide brown eyes, sniffling softly as she shakes her head. Great. Okay, let's find your mommy and talk to the cops. No. A loud bang goes off behind me and I instinctively yank the child against me, flattening her to the ground as protection. I hear a struggle behind me and glance over my shoulder in confusion, jaw dropping to see Kachin's foot digging repeatedly into the side of the criminal on the ground who clutches his gun weakly, clearly having fired a shot in my direction. Before I can even move to help, Kachin's foot slams down on his good wrist, a resulting crack mirroring the one from earlier as he cries out again. The gun slides over to me, where I quickly snatch it up and flip on the safety. Sir. That was very dangerous. Are you alright? Shut it, would you? I'm fine. Watch your back, demon idiot. He snaps, kicking hard into the kidnapper's ribs once more before letting up. The man curls in on himself, sobbing pitifully on the dusty floor of the alley. I blink at him in shock, holding the girl's hand tightly as I process. The sound of running footsteps alerts me to the approaching authorities, and I snap back into it and rush forward, shoving Kakin back down the alleyway he came from. Thank you for your help, but you should go. Don't want to be caught up in all this. I insist, giving him one more hard shove to the shoulders before turning to face the sprinting cops and the child's mother behind them. I sling a web onto the roof and land on the ledge, smiling down on them. Hey guys. The little girl is okay, and that guy's got 2 broken wrists. I beam, nodding at the man on the floor. Oh, he had this. I dangle the pistol over the edge from my crouched position, removing the magazine and tossing the gun down into one of the cops' hands before chucking the leftover bullets into the dumpster beside them. I wave at the little girl, who stares up at me in awe, before nodding and wishing them well. I escape quickly. While the cops themselves have nothing against me, their chief does, and they're obligated to bring me in if they get the chance. Better safe than sorry. The sun has started going down. I should be getting home before Mom worries. I land on a random nearby building top, bending over with my hands on my knees while I catch my breath. Ugh, I was really looking forward to getting home with no drama today. At least I got out of there before any news crews pulled up. I feel bad for breaking that guy's arm. I know he was doing something gross and horrible, but that level of force wasn't necessary to the situation. I was shocked about Kakin. I know he's a pretty confrontational person, but physically assaulting someone to save a random spider guy he barely knows? I've also got to work on keeping my focus. If Kakin hadn't shown up, I might have gotten my brains blown out. Probably not. I could have kicked him off me in time, but I should still be more careful about how I go about takedowns. I did get hurt again. I've gotten slashed and grazed a few times, but never such blunt trauma. I touch the back of my head gently and wince. No blood, but definitely gonna bruise under my hair. I should take off my mask. Fancy meeting you here. A gut-wrenchingly familiar gruff voice calls out from behind me. I whip around with a grimace to face the well-built blonde, grateful that I didn't take off my mask after all. I freeze in shock for a few seconds before I remember I've got an act to keep up. Speak for yourself. Shocked anyone's up here this late. I point out, insanely grateful that May thought to incorporate voice modification into All Might. He rolls his crimson eyes, stuffing his hands deep into the pockets of his running shorts. He's panting and sweating like he ran up the stairs of this building to catch me. The slight, cool breeze ruffles his hair and makes him draw his shoulders to his ears against the chill. Suddenly like 6. Saw you swing up here and figured I'd like to officially meet this infamous spider boy. He smirks, walking up to me to glance over the edge of the building. Spider-Man, I mutter under my breath. His eyes slide over to me, chuckling dryly. Whatever. He scoffs, turning to face me fully. I stare awkwardly, watching a slight frown tug at his lips. I get a strong wind of déjà vu as he sizes me up. Just so you know, that was lame. He huffs, turning back out to face the calm streets below. I recoil slightly, crossing my arms defensively. Lame? I saved a little kid from being kidnapped. What's lame about that? As I open my mouth to protest, he waves me off with a TSK. Sure, you rescued a kid, but without me helping you out, you would have gotten your effing sheet rocked. He grins evilly. I grit my teeth, flicking his forehead and fighting off a smug grin at the shock on his face. I'd like to see you try my job, Blondie. I tease. By the way, you could have gotten yourself hurt, so don't pull anything like that again. I scold him responsibly. I like this whole Kakin not knowing whom thing, makes it super easy for me to mess with him back. Way less awkward tension. He quickly composes himself, narrowing his eyes at me competitively. I'd be better than your butt, that's for sure. And again, you'd have gotten shot if I didn't step in. He smirks, raising his chin. I quirk a brow at his confidence, fighting a laugh. You're a real piece of work, aren't you, Ka? What's your name again? I internally cringe, almost using my very obvious, niche nickname for him when we're supposed to have just met. If he noticed anything, he doesn't show it, just holding his hand out with a steady, jacked arm. Name's Katsuki Bakugo, don't forget it. He demands, nearly crushing my hand in his grip. I stifle a yelp, almost forgetting that my genes have been mechanically re-engineered to make me stronger than him. Practically snarling in joy, I squeeze the sheet out of his fingers just because I can, relishing in his slight wince. He tears out of my grasp, subtly shaking his hand off and scowling at me spitefully. Right, Bakugo. I hum, ignoring how foreign his surname feels in my mouth. In this dark lighting, his face all relaxed and not scowling as hard, his handsomeness really shines through. I shake my head. Silly Izuku, you really hit your head too hard. He glances nervously off to the side, sticking his hand down his pocket again and searching around for a few moments before pulling out what I quickly realize to be a small, printed photograph of me and a black marker. I beam in pride. Kaken wants my autograph? I take a deep breath and force my overconfident persona back on. You gonna ask nicely or just shove it in my face like a caveman? I prompt. His eyes sharpen, frown deepening. Give me your autograph, you cocky dipshit. He mutters, nearly chucking his marker at me. I cackle as I swipe it from the air and swiftly scribble out my embarrassingly well-practiced and thought-out autograph. I glance up and meet his glare through the white eyes of my suit, humming contentedly at the poorly concealed eagerness. Here you go, you only get one so don't lose it. I tease. Whatever, loser. He smiles, almost softly. I'm hit with the brick-like memory of small Kaken beaming in excitement as the actor for All Might in the movies signed his limited edition Golden Age poster, the joy and pride and wonder in his eyes. And now he's looking at me like that. I force myself back into the present and snap my head around, suddenly remembering the time. Well, it was nice meeting you. Did you? I dunno, want a picture or something before I go? I ask hesitantly. He rolls his eyes, but digs his phone out of his pocket and slouches over to me, holding his phone up but not quite capturing my whole face. I secretly relish in the fact that I'm now taller than him, by like half a centimeter, but still, and snatch it from his hand, holding it up high and spamming the picture button, capturing him scowling at me before switching to holding his middle finger in front of my mask as he fights back a smile. I hand his phone back to him with a sly, "You're welcome," before turning my back to the edge of the roof. See you around, Katsuki Bakugo. I grin, getting butterflies at the way his lips part a bit, before letting myself fall backward. I hear him gasp sharply, quickly leaning over the side to see if I fell as I sling a web and swing away towards my place. Later that night, freshly showered and laying in my cozy, warm bed with damp curls and an ice pack pressed to the back of my mostly healed head, I stumble across Kaken's Instagram story. I fight back a smile as my ears heat up. The story is a slightly blurred photo of Kaken's middle finger half obscuring my green spider mask as he grins sharply, all teeth and smug bragging. The apples of my smiling cheeks are notable through the thick fabric of my mask, and with the lights of Brooklyn late at night glowing in the background, it's almost too aesthetic, like something you'd find on Pinterest. Small text below. The picture reads, "Bug Boy's just my sidekick, extras. Meet your friendly fucking neighborhood Katsuki Bakugo." I click my phone off and toss it to the side, grinning into my pillow. God, he'd have a fit if he knew it was really me on that roof. So you really met him, Katz? Mina squeals. Kaken's whole gang crowded around his desk in front of me. He rolls his eyes and leans back, kicking his legs up on the desk. I sit behind all of them, pretending to read the textbook before the lecture starts but sneakily eavesdropping on what Kaken has to say about Spider-Man. Ran into the idiot in the middle of him stopping a kidnapping. I saved his FNG but from being shot. He grins, flexing his biceps to accentuate his words. Okay, bud, and I'm Spider-Man himself. Denki teases. Kaminari laughs airily and pats Kaken's shoulder, but I wince. He really shouldn't be blabbing so much about his involvement with that. It wasn't exactly by the book. Oh, well, at least they're not taking him seriously. The beefy man glares at Denki, reaching over to smack his head before pulling out his phone. I hear ohs and ahs as I glance to see that he's showing off the pictures we took last night, triumphant and snarky. Was he cool? Kirishima asks excitedly, shaking Kaken by the arm. Oi, get off me you weirdo. He snaps, and yeah he was FNG cool, he's Spider-Man. He mutters, shoving Kirishima's arm as if that fact is explanation enough. They all giggle heartily and roll their eyes. Okay, so you're telling me that the Spider-Man has laid hands on this very phone? Gyro asks, holding Kaken's phone in its clear, boring case like it's the Holy Grail. He snorts. Hey, I hold that phone every day and I never get any excitement like this. He ruffles her hair, A slightly out-of-character display of affection. Kakin has a soft spot for his girl best friends, Mina and Jair. He geeks out over fashion stuff with Mina and will only ever go out if Jairu's with his group. It's sweet. I think it really shows how he's grown as a person. Jairu sticks her tongue out, tossing the device back into Kakin's hands. Well, you're no Spider-Man now, are you, big guy? Mina pats his arm as though she's consoling him. Kakin glares at the bubbly girl spitefully, slouching lower in his seat and pouting like a toddler. I quirk a brow as my eyes lock on the picture I signed for him last night, the first edition inside his clear phone case. I smile to myself. You're still cool though, bro, we love you. Kirishima nods eagerly. Both girls playfully tug on their boyfriend's hair to get them out of Kakin's face, Mina rolling her eyes in fond exasperation. When Aizawa walks in, they all return to their respective seats and sigh. The scraggly, tired man drops his bag and a large cup of coffee beside his desk, rubbing his face and flicking on the screen. Good morning, everyone. We'll be continuing our lesson on gene technologies and gene modifications, if we have time. He starts to open PowerPoint, and everyone in the classroom aside from me lets out a groan. The rest of the day zooms by until lunch, where my friends abandon their food to debate the newest development in the Spider-Man drama. He broke a man's wrists. Sue exclaims heatedly, throwing her hands into the air. I wince. Well, I only really broke one, but they couldn't know that. A kidnapper's wrists, Sue. He was saving a little girl. Ochako groans, banging her hands on the table. Not to mention the guy had a gun, so he was probably just trying to disarm him. Shinso adds helpfully. Ochako nods in agreement, letting out an angered huff before shoving a bite of salad into her mouth. He should have been gentler, all I'm saying. Sue grumbles, arms crossed in defeat. Ida nods from beside me, back straight and glasses sliding down his nose as usual. I agree, Spider-Man has a bad habit of using too much force. Apparently the man was beat so bad he cracked some ribs. He bites coldly. I shrink in my seat. I know they're not attacking me, but I kind of am Spider-Man. They're not wrong. I do need to learn to control my strength better, but I'm not even the one who beat that guy up, so I don't think it's something to cancel me over. If it was a cop that broke some wrists, none of you would care. Todoroki hums, head tilted at Ida in challenge. The blue-haired valedictorian stiffens at the passive aggression, shoving his glasses up his nose with sweaty palms. You untrue dash. Very true, actually. I bite my lip to stifle an outcry of shock at the familiar feeling of Kakin standing behind me, undoubtedly glaring down at Tenya. Normally my spidey sense, the name may dubbed for my newly found odd ability to feel danger and stares, would alert me to his approach, but he stares at me so much that I just tune his presence out entirely. When that idiot rookie Takami Kigo broke a guy's rib because he was too inexperienced to know how to do a safe tackle, you all defended him saying it's not his fault, he just needs more training. Kakin sneers, walking around and sitting right in front of me. I avert my gaze, pulling out my phone faster than I ever have to avoid engaging in conversation with him. I tense up as my arm hairs raise, knowing that those red eyes are on me yet again. Well, that's different, because he did receive proper training after. This spider guy is just doing whatever he wants without regulation. Momo points out, hand twined with Ida's. Kakin rolls his eyes, leaning back in his chair. Who says he isn't training? You think he doesn't see all the controversy about himself in the news? He's probably working on it in private. The red-eyed man leans forward, resting his jaw in his hand. Sue scoffs. How can you just assume that some stranger is trustworthy? You don't even know him. She croaks. Kakin shrugs. How do you blindly trust cops when you're not acquainted with each and every one? He offers back. Ida sputters beside me, harumphing pettily before storming away from the table with Momo in tow. I glance up to see Kakin looking smug, receiving a pat on the back from Kaminari, who's just walked over to investigate the scene. You're right, cats. They're only being so harsh on Spidey because they already decided not to like him. Denki nods eagerly. The blonde rolls his eyes. I'm always right, Dun's face. He grumbles. I see Tsu glaring at her school lunch angrily, as if it's the one who wronged her. What about you, Midoriya? I snap my gaze up to Denki at the sound of my name. I realize that everyone is watching me. I'm the only one who doesn't participate in these debates, and for good reason. I mean, just look at how expectantly Kakin is staring at me. Well, I understand both sides. I do think he's doing more good than harm, though. I shrug, trying to keep it vague. I ignore how Kakin rolls his eyes. Just form an opinion for once, UDMN pushover. He grumbles. I recoil. What's that supposed to mean? I do form my own opinions. God, talking to him can be so. Midoriya forms plenty of opinions, and I'm sure he has one about this. He just doesn't like contributing to silly riffs between his friends. Todoroki butts in helpfully. I smile at him, gratitude written all over my face while I ignore Kakin's scowl. When the bell rings, I practically run away from the lunch tables. Talking to Kakin behind a mask is one thing, but truly face-to-face is a whole other can of worms. I'd rather avoid that as long as possible. A big part of me has felt really bad for deceiving him. I feel like I'm tricking the guy into talking to me, since he wouldn't chat normally with just Izuku. Is it wrong to engage with him while I'm Spider-Man? Should I avoid the blonde altogether? Midoriya. Someone calls out behind me, pulling my thoughts away from the familiar track of guilt. I turn in the hall to meet the familiar doughy brown eyes of Uraraka, chasing after me with short, stubby strides. I smile and wait up for her, slowing my pace to match hers. Hey Chieko. What's up? I smile warmly, letting her arm twine with mine. She narrows her big eyes at me suspiciously, making my palms clam up. You've been acting weird. Too quiet. She mutters, pinching the skin on my inner elbow with her nails. I wince and JRK away, but find myself stuck in her shockingly strong grip. I've just been focused on school and stuff. I lie, doing my best to sound convincing. She scoffs. You're always focused on school, but you never shut down and stop talking. Ever. She side-eyes me sharply. I know for a fact that if everything were normal, you'd be fanboying over this spider guy harder than anyone else here. She says. I press my lips together and flush in embarrassment, avoiding her eyes. Ouch, I mumble, feigning hurt. She rolls her eyes and smacks the back of my head. You know what I mean, Aizu. Just, you can talk to me, okay? Todoroki too. She mumbles. I sigh, smiling softly and hugging her shoulders from the side. Okay. To my intense relief, the day goes by with no other surprises or bumps. No car chases, no children washed away on the docks, nothing for your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to handle after his long day at school. I just get to ride home on my peaceful train and kick my shoes off at the door of our small, cozy apartment. Izuku, honey, you're home early for once. My mother calls from the kitchen. I hum warmly. Inko is the city librarian, a single mother and a saint. She fosters abandoned kittens and willingly does community service to help clean up Queens. I learned my sickening sense of empathy and justice from her, and I'm so glad to have her as my mother. Of course, I haven't been able to spend as much time with her as usual, considering the whole superhero gig. She assumes it's just because my senior finals are coming up, that I'm spending time in the lab studying or out with my friends like a normal teen. Bless her soul. Hey Mom. Yeah, May didn't need any help in the lab today, so I just came right home. I call back to her as I hang my backpack on my dining table chair. That's great. We should have dinner together and chat about how school's going. She beams, walking out of the kitchen while wiping her hands off on her used apron. A short, chubby woman, with long green hair and big doughy eyes like mine. Her face is creased with years of smiles and she always smells like brown sugar. I sigh, a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying seemingly evaporating off my shoulders as I nod. Sounds good. I'll set the table. And you've got your honors English final essay all done already? She asks in shock, spinning the steaming spaghetti onto her fork. I nod, quickly chewing. Finished it a week after it got announced. I'm almost done with my AP Calc study guide and the final in computer science is just some coding. Everything else is easy as pie. I grin proudly. She sighs and pats my hair affectionately, her eyes filled with pride and fondness. I'm so happy you're breezing through these last few months, but of course, my Aizu always does well at school. She chomps down another bite. I roll my eyes. That's because I'm a nerd with no life. I tease. She scowls and tuts, like she takes personal offense to my self-belittlement. The people who work hard in high school are the people who have successful lives later on. She reminds me, gesturing aggressively with her fork in her own personal catchphrase. I giggle softly at her intensity. I know, Mom, I'm only joking. Plus, I do have a life. I remind her. She shakes her head, holding my hand and, to my dismay, fighting tears. If Inko Midoriya is anything, she's an emotional roller coaster. I'm so proud of you, Izuku. You're gonna go places, I know it. She sighs. The tips of my ears go red as I mumble something to wave her off. Praise from my mother isn't rare, but it gets to me every time. Yeah, I hope so. After I help wash up, I excuse myself to my room to finish up some homework. Usually that's an excuse to go patrol for the night, but I actually do have some missing worksheets in AP Physics. It's not super hard, nothing about school is particularly difficult for me, so I get it all done in about an hour. At that point it's about 6:30 p.m., and something in me is itching to swing around for a little bit. Not even a proper patrol, just a joyride of an outing. I flick off my lights and play some music so that my mom thinks I'm studying, and activate All Might with a giddy and quiet squeal. After confirming that there are no onlookers, I dart out onto the wall of my building and crawl up to my roof, looking out on the nighttime view of Brooklyn. The light pollution really kills the stars, but it's beautiful all the same. When I first moved here as a little kid, the noises of the city were grating. I hated the squealing cars and the morning rush, the sirens and loud ads and screaming junkies, but as I grew up and got used to it, the noise became comforting. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it'll inevitably grow on you. I lazily swing from building to bridge to billboard, only half looking out for crime, mostly just enjoying the night air as the sun fully sets. A few people notice me and holler from below, some kids wanting pictures and autographs, and my heart swells. If little me could see that other kids are dying for a picture with him, he'd explode. I'll explode, honestly. The idea that half a city is enamored with silly little Deku, Spider-Man or not, is something I never saw in a million years for myself. The best I ever hoped for was being generally well known for creating new machines and tech, if getting any recognition at all. After it gets fully dark and most of the locals are inside, I settle on the roof of an apartment building a few blocks away from UA. I let myself relax, head falling back to stare at the hazy sky as my legs kick casually over the edge. Oi! I jump nearly 2 feet in the air, scrambling upright and looking around for the creator of the harsh, out-of-place noise frantically, when, oh, of course, a blurry, spiky-haired blonde silhouette is waving at me from below. My shoulders relax, a comfortable smile warming my cheeks as I crouch down to see him better. Katsuki, right? I call, as if I'd ever forget his name. Demonstrate. He shouts, grinning sharply up at me. He wears loose black joggers and a blue hoodie, wired headphones dangling from one ear as he drips in sweat. On a nighttime run, it seems. You know, being on your own out this late is real dangerous, Bakugo. I point out. He scowls up at me. I can barely hear you, come down here. He hollers demandingly. I scoff. Me, go down there and miss out on this view? Laughable. An idea pops into my head, and my grin widens. I point my wrist down at him, and as the realization of what I'm about to do dawns on him, my web is already on its way before he can protest. It latches onto the front of his shirt and I pull it taut, ignoring his shouts as I yank him upwards carefully. He scrambles to hold onto the thick threads, staring at the retreating ground with a pale face. I give it one final tug before he's toppling onto the dusty roof, catching his breath as if he's just finished a marathon. You a-hole! He cries, shakily getting to his feet and swiping the loose web off his front. You said you couldn't hear me. I shrug. He scowls, stuffing his hands into his jacket pocket after ripping the other bud from his ear. Coulda Ifenji warned me. He mutters, glancing back down to where he was previously standing, or come down to meet me like a normal person. I grin playfully, plucking the last bit of silky thread from his sweater front. And miss out on that face? Police. I tease. He quirks a brow at my wording, and I feel my face heat up rapidly. Thank God for this mask. And not like that. I shout, shaking my hands and backing away in embarrassment. I meant how shocked you looked, not dash. That I'm hot and you wanted to see my gorgeous face? He tilts his head, a smug smirk on his lips. It's okay, bug boy, you're not the first and you're certainly not the last. He pats my shoulder in faux consolation. I groan and bury my head in my hands. He cackles and removes his hands from his pockets to mess with his hair. Shut it, you jerk, or I'll throw you back down without the web, I mutter darkly. He rolls his eyes. As if, greenie. You're too much of a goody two-shoes, his crimson eyes narrow in challenge. I glance down to the bottom once more for dramatic effect. This may be the only time I can one-up Kakin. With one dry laugh, I spin around and grab him by the shoulders, leaning him over the edge so that his heels barely remain planted as I hold him up by the strings of his hoodie. He yelps, his cold hands digging into my wrist desperately as his eyes fly wide, lips draining of color. I grin in triumph. You wanna bet? I mumble, leaning forward teasingly. His throat bobs as he gulps, but his teeth bare in a snarl. You wouldn't dare. He whispers shakily, not sounding fully convinced. I smile evilly, wrenching one of his hands off my wrist and shooting a web into his palm before letting go of his jacket and pushing him to dangle by a thread. He yelps, holding onto the web for dear life as I lay on my belly to peer off the edge at him. He swings his other arm around to clutch at his lifeline, legs swinging in mid-air as I grin down at him. F fucker. Let me up. He shouts, staring at the pavement below. I hum in contemplation, stroking my chin with my free hand as he starts to sweat. I dunno, this is pretty funny dash. I'll report you for child endangerment. He shrieks, kicking his feet madly. I roll my eyes, going to pull him up when the terror-inspiring sound of the web snapping hits my ears. My eyes widen as the blonde starts falling, seemingly in slow-mo as I dive down after him without hesitation. I wasn't too concerned, he was barely in the air for half a second before I was holding onto him by his hood and slinging a web onto a high billboard to keep us up. Quit, stop thrashing. I whisper, hoisting him up by his hoodie and letting him hold onto my shoulders. I wrap my arm around his toned waist, catching my breath as we hang above the city. I shocked myself there. Sometimes I really forget that I'm 10 times stronger than the average person, and heaving up 190 pounds of Katsuki Bakugo is no big feat anymore. You almost killed me dash. No, I did not, that was on purpose. I lie to shut him up. He snaps his jaw shut comically, seething and glaring daggers at me. His grip around my neck tightens and I sigh, wondering how exactly to get out of this situation. I need both my hands to swing. Hey, Bakugo, climb on my back, will you? I lift my shoulders to encourage his shift. He grits his teeth, eyes locked on the ground below. I'm too heavy for that sheet dash. Katsuki, I am not going to drop you. I promise, squeezing his waist reassuringly and ignoring how that makes my ears heat up. He sighs, glaring at me briefly, threateningly, before allowing me to maneuver him onto my back. His legs wind around my waist and his arms around my neck from behind, and I shoot a quick web that secures his hands to my chest before relaxing and beginning to swing through the city. I hear him gasping lightly, painfully aware of how warm his body is against mine. Not every civilian gets this kind of special treatment, so be grateful. I bite, dropping onto another roof and sprinting forward to gain momentum before slinging another web to fly across the city. At the lack of reply, I glance over my shoulder. Kachin's cheeks and the tip of his nose are tinted pink from the chilly air. His eyes soft and his lips parted in awe, a rare, calm expression. I swallow loudly, forcing myself to watch where I'm going. That's my school. He mumbles, pointing down to the UA building. I nod. I figured, most kids around here go to that high school. I hum nonchalantly. You say that as if you're not a kid yourself. He scoffs. My gut drops to my toes. What makes you think dash? Peach, as if any adult would go out of their way to hang out with a high schooler, let alone F around with them like this. I bet you've got some voice modifier on, huh? My jaw drops. Sometimes I forget that Kakin is actually very perceptive. It gets lost behind his loud, angry personality. You're not denying it. He murmurs, a grin clear on his voice. I sputter, cringing a few times before shaking my head sharply. Denying it. I sing, swinging back around to drop him off where I found him. I lower both of us onto the sidewalk, illuminated by street lights as he untangles himself from me. I sigh, catching my breath as he peels the security web off his hands. He fixes his clothes and pops one headphone back into his ear, glancing up at me shortly. So, do you go to my school? He prods gently. I stare down at him with a frown, crossing my arms and trying to put up a defensive, secure image. Number 1, I am not a child, and 2, if I was, why would I tell you anything that would reveal myself? I roll my eyes. He shrugs. I'm not a snitch. He explains, as if that should ease all my worries. I scoff. Yes, because that quells all my top-secret confidential concerns. Thank you, high school boy. I chuckle lightly. Geez, I'm scary good at lying. I should look into that more. He eyes me suspiciously, giving me yet another judgmental once-over which sends shivers down my spine. I'm still 87% sure you're a high schooler too, but I'll drop it for now. He mutters, hands back in his pockets. I shrug, turning to sling away when his hand grips my wrist, locking me in place. Thank you for that. He mumbles, scratching the back of his head and avoiding meeting my eyes. I choke on my spit, shocked. I haven't heard a genuine thank you from this boy since we were in elementary school. God, being Spider-Man is so weird sometimes. Yeah, no problem. Get home safe. I rush out, practically running away from whatever the hell that was. The instant I crawl through my bedroom window, I groan and tear off my mask, chucking it against the wall and tousling my flattened hair. I have no clue what to make of that. As I deactivate All Might and slowly dress in pajamas, a ratty pair of basketball shorts and a t-shirt, I think over everything that just happened. I recall the nostalgic image of that competitive smile, the way I behaved so casually, so familiarly, when I can barely get 2 words out in his direction as Izuku. To be fair, I have an excuse for that. All the sense of comfort I had with the blonde was torn to shreds in middle school. I sigh, searching around for my hairbrush. I mean, he was friendly enough compared to usual, almost sheepish seeming at the end there. And he seemed like he enjoyed himself, so that's nice. It was odd feeling his warm body so close to mine, like unreal. I swear he was so warm it felt like my back was on fire. But if I recall, he's always run hot. Another thing that hasn't changed is how he smells. That oddly sweet banana caramel fragrance that pours from his body, maybe a little bit different from a new shampoo or cologne, is the same as I remember it from when we'd have sleepovers as kids. Most of his house smelled like lilacs, like his mom, but his room was always pungently sweet, contrary to his hot personality and love for spicy food. I scowl at myself in the mirror as I tear the recovered hairbrush through my flattened curls. Why am I analyzing this so much, anyways? He just happened to be there and we managed to have some spur-of-the-moment fun, even if it's unfamiliar to me. Is that a sign to attempt to reconnect with him as Izuku? Would that even be able to happen? Or is it a sign to stay even farther away in order to avoid him connecting the dots between Spider-Man and I? As I start to give up on my hair with a groan of frustration, an unknown male voice echoes through my house. Every hair on my body stands up, my muscles tensing and my eyes flying wide. Who the hell is here? I don't remember my mom mentioning visitors tonight. I slowly drop my suit keychain on my desk and crack my door, listening for any signs of struggle. Burglar? I can't make out words, just soft murmurs. I grit my teeth and creep down the hall, poised for defense, even grabbing an umbrella off the stand by the door. I pause around the corner, listening to the hushed conversation. It doesn't seem like there's any distress. I take a deep breath before I jump around the corner into the kitchen with the makeshift weapon raised over my head. Who are you? I'm cut off by my mother's shrill scream. I recoil, taking in the sight of her hand clutched to her chest and her wide eyes, clearly startled by my abrupt entrance. I drop my hands to my sides, head tilted in utter confusion. It abruptly dawns on me that there's another person in the room, a tall, scrawny man with long yellow hair and shadowed blue eyes. I do a double take, jaw dropping as the umbrella falls from my grip. F-I-N-G. All Might? I cry, rushing forward and standing on my toes to get a good look at him. The man backs up with an awkward chuckle, patting my arm stiffly. Hey there, kid. He smiles. I feel my jaw drop even further if possible, absolutely baffled as to why the famous actor of All Might, Yagi Toshinori, is standing in my kitchen at 8 p.m. I jerk around to look at my mom, mouth opening and closing in a loss for words. She giggles airily, cheeks bright pink. Izuku, this is Yagi Toshinori. She smiles. Well, DUH? Why is he in our kitchen? I cry, hands thrown into the air for effect. The two adults exchange a knowing glance, and my mother slowly walks to his side and intertwines their hands together. My eyes nearly bulge out of my head, sputtering madly. I've been waiting to tell you about this. I wanted to see if it would last, she murmurs nervously. I thought you were asleep. It's out now, though. This man and I are in a relationship. She explains. I stare between them for what feels like hours, the cogs in my brain smashing together in complete bewilderment. You're dating All Might and you never told me? I shriek, twining my hands behind my head as I turn away, catching my breath. Feel my mom hesitantly put her hand on my shoulder, turning me to face her again. I didn't actually know who he was until our third date. She shrugs. Toshinori nods, smiling down fondly at the stubby woman. That was part of her charm, actually. She was totally clueless, only liked me as a person and not for what I do. He hums, patting her head. I crinkle my nose. Okay, you. I mutter. And exactly how long has this been going on? I question, gesturing between them rapidly with an interrogatory tone. She taps on her cheek, thinking for a few moments. 3 months now, right? She looks up at the thin man. He nods, and she turns back to me with a smile as if this is entirely normal. I shake my head, eyes still blown wide. This is insane. I have nobody to talk to about this. I whisper to myself, blinking rapidly. The adults laugh softly, amused by my borderline distress, and I shoot a sharp glare at them to shut them up. So that's... I can't comprehend this right now. I'm too tired, so... We'll talk about this more later. I sigh, running my hands down my face. Okay, sweetheart. Sorry to spring this on you after a long day. My mother frowns, patting my cheek. I stare at Yagi in silence for a few moments longer. Is this really the All Might? The star of all 3 of the movie trilogy? This has got to be a hallucination. My mom started to speak, clearly worried over my frozen state, but I wave her off, sparing Toshinori one final, confused glance before heading down the hall. As I walk to my room, I pinch my inner elbow to be sure that this isn't just a fever dream. Today would actually be considered good, don't get me wrong, just baffling. I had a quality hangout with Kaken, something I haven't done in almost 10 years, and directly after that I find out that my mother is dating my childhood idol. Either I've entered some parallel dimension or I'm dreaming, because this is not logically explainable. But none of it is bad, that's the thing. Just unexpected. I sigh and face plant onto my bed. Whatever. I'll think about all this in the morning. Okay, so the actor for this famous comic character who you've been obsessed with since childhood is now dating your mom? Shinso clarifies, eyes narrowed in confusion. I nod eagerly, waving my hands around to explain the insanity of this arrangement. Yes. And she didn't even know it was him, even though I've been watching those movies with her since I was like 6. To be fair, when he was acting he was super buff and looked totally different, but she should have recognized the name. This is just Dash. Crazy, we know. Shoto finishes for me, smiling softly. My cheeks heat up, my mouth slowly closing as I nod. Oops, went on a tangent again. Ochako laughs with a shake of her head, munching on potato chips. That's pretty wacky, but I'm glad Ms. Midoriya found someone. She's such a sweet lady, she deserves it. Chaco hums fondly. I groan and rest my head on my arms. I guess you're right, I grumble. Of course I am, sweet Izuku. She pats my hair with a mild tone of condescension. I raise my head slightly to scowl up at her, earning a snarky eye roll. For a girl so sweet and fluffy, she sure can be kind of a JRK. But she's been my best friend since 7th grade, along with Todoroki. She's been to my place more times than I can count. My mom loves her. Sometimes I think she loves Ochako more than me. I bet Bakugo would flip out if he heard. You know, he's kind of an all-might buff himself, believe it or not. Kaminari hums, toying with a tiny skateboard on the underside of his tray. Jiru side-eyes him momentarily, displaying irritation at the clacking and flipping before snatching the noisy toy away, earning a gasp and a pout from her energetic boyfriend. I smile, resting my chin in my palm and letting my eyes wander across the room to the broody blonde sitting with his other friends. Yeah, I did know that. I hum, not intending for it to be heard. When I return my attention to my own friends, I find Shoto staring at me with a look of slight intrigue, brow raised as his heterochromatic eyes trail between Kaken and I. I press my lips together awkwardly and stuff a bite of cold school pasta into my mouth in order to avoid spewing more awkward info. My mumbling is a serious issue. Hey, have you guys heard about that new gang in town? The League of Villains or something? My head snaps up, zeroing in on Jiru, who seemingly mentioned this alleged gang. Haven't they been going around and stealing random sheet, that cop-killing group? Hatsum asks, head tilted. My brows furrow. Cop killing? This is the first I'm hearing of it? Well, that's a pretty corny name for such a scary gang. Denki snorts, being met with a hard smack to the shoulder from Shinso. Yeah, I think I've seen them being talked about a bit more online. Apparently they've been flying under the radar all year. Chaco adds. Todoroki tilts his head in interest, setting down his bottled soda. I think I've heard my dad talking about that, actually. He chimes in, gathering the attention of the whole table. We don't know much about them aside from this weird vendetta against cops. He shrugs. I frown deeply. It's concerning that I've never even heard their name while they've been committing such heinous acts. I wonder if it's being kept under wraps on purpose, to avoid public panic? Well, whatever the case, it seems it's getting out now. Do you know where they've been frequenting? I butt in, getting a few shocked looks, just so I know where to avoid. I lie. Todoroki scratches the back of his head, everyone thinking. I hear they've been hanging around an old power warehouse downtown. You know the one, a few blocks down from that old boutique? Jiru gestures over her shoulder. I'll send you the address so you can let your mom know and stuff. She nods, pulling out her phone. Okay, wonderful, I'll go check it out tonight. Thanks, Kyo. I appreciate it. I smile warmly. She ends up forwarding the info to the rest of the group, telling us all to be safe and avoid any danger. For such a detached-seeming person, she really does care a lot. I'm glad she and Kaken are so close, must be a pretty good influence on him. This sort of area is the kind of place you avoid past 7 p.m., needles and broken glass bottles at every turn, flickering streetlights above unkempt pavement, where if you don't watch where you're going you'll fall on your face. Homeless camps are common around here, junkies and drunks stumbling around harmlessly and muttering random words, a dusty crack of New York that nobody ever cleans up. Inside this rotting wound is the alleged League of Villains hideout, these supposed cop killers. I'm not 100% sure they even really exist, considering I've never heard anything about them in my 2 months being a superhero. For all I know, it's just petty gossip among teenagers. If there was really a known location of repeated gang activity, I'm certain that the police would investigate. Can't hurt to check it out though, right? I keep my distance from the ground, sticking to the shadowy and mostly untouched roofs of abandoned buildings and rinky-dink apartments that are crumbling at the seams. I know what warehouse everyone was talking about. It used to be a power plant before there was some huge accident that killed 5 workers, and it got deemed unfit for use and abandoned by the city. It was supposed to be torn down so space could be made for new housing, but everything in this area was supposed to be torn down at one point or another. Once I get the huge, looming building in my sight, I creep down to the ground and approach it quietly. There are still some lingering scraps of caution tape floating around from years ago, the only sound in the air being a slight buzz from the outdated lights. I rip the rusty chain off the handles of the double doors and try to open the squeaky things as quick as possible, wincing at the sharp squeal. The inside is just a lobby, dusty tile floors and a row of lockers at the back hall. Through there, though, leads into a huge room with incredibly high ceilings. From the outside it looks like multiple stories when in reality the ceiling space is just extra room for machinery and pipes. Big, blue industrial reactor basins are lined up down the middle, connected to various rusting pipes and tubes, towering over me menacingly. The whole place is pretty dark, but another thing I acquired with Mini-Mito's nibble was the ability to see decently in dark spaces. There are old catwalks above my head, accessing higher valves and control panels, so I sling a web up there and step carefully on the unstable metal. Looking down on the reactors, they're empty and filled with dust, ash, glass, and maybe mold. The ceiling and some parts of the closet walls are scorched black, a clear blast path traceable from one of the blown-out observation windows embedded in the wall above my head all the way to the other side of the building. I scrunch my face up at the sight, quickly moving on. There are various storage closets and control rooms, none of which show any sign of recent activity to indicate some big gang hiding out here. It was just talk, after all. The whole place feels off, though. Sometimes places smell like death, and sometimes it's a feeling in the air, weighing on your shoulders and pressing on your lungs. It dawns on me embarrassingly late that the dust coating the entirety of this place is probably the settled ash sent airborne by that killer explosion, undisturbed for years until now. As I'm heading back out for the exit, eager to be leaving, the hairs on my neck stand up straight and a cold shock spears through my chest, telling me to jump over to my right. Without question I follow my instincts, only half surprised when moments later, a knife comes whizzing past where my head was previously located. I quickly zip back up to the catwalks, crouching low in defense and quickly scanning for who could have thrown that with such precision. Down here, Spider Boy. A girlish voice sings below me. I jolt, peering down through the grate beneath my feet and catching glimpse of a shock of blonde hair. I quickly hop onto the nearest closed reactor, crouching down and peering at the shadowy space below the walks, a thin figure barely visible. Did you throw that at me? I call awkwardly. I hear footsteps, my whole body on edge and screaming at me to run from all directions. Who asked this chick? Maybe. She hums, her silhouette wandering closer to where the moonlight from the high windows would illuminate her. I narrow my eyes, head tilting in confusion. And why would you do that? I question. I hear a soft sigh, as if she's pondering her reason. Who just chucks blades at people for fun? Well, you're not supposed to be here. She mumbles, a glint of yellow eyes popping in the thin light. I scoff, slowly sliding back onto the ground, now barely 20 feet away from this mysterious threat. But you are. I prompt. A flash of white teeth, a giggle echoing around the high roof and assaulting my ears from every angle. Don't worry about that. She shrugs. As my eyes adjust to the lower light, I can make out two buns hanging limply beside her head, a slim face, the occasional glint of narrow yellow eyes and sharp canines. This girl can't be more than my age, if not younger, barely 5 feet 6 inches if that. What is she doing in a place like this? I hear a shuffle, and find that she's now staring down at me from the catwalks where I stood a few moments ago. Still in the shadows, not quite visible. We were waiting to see if you'd notice us. She sings, her figure dropping into a crouch. I see a glint, quickly realizing she's pointing a sliver knife in my direction in the same fashion as a toy gun. I narrow my eyes, slowly dropping into a crouch mirroring hers, leaning forward in attempt to make out her face clearer. She throws her head back in a loud, jingling laugh that throws me off. And who is we? I ask hesitantly. She falls back on the suspended grate floor, crossing her legs and rolling the knife along her knuckles hypnotically. Now why would I tell you that, She smiles, her teeth glinting. I grit my teeth, fighting to keep my composure. As I tense up, preparing to sling a web and incapacitate her, she bolts to the side under the catwalk and out of my sight. I inhale sharply, spinning to face her new position where she dimly waggles her finger at me as if she's scolding a child. Let's keep it civil this time, yeah? She snaps, irritation clear in her voice. I scoff, throwing my hands into the air in exasperation. You threw a knife at my head? I remind her. She sighs, leaning her body against one of the pipes beside her. Leave the past in the past, Buggy, grudges give you wrinkles. I blink rapidly. What on earth is going on right now? Is she effing you with me? Look, lady, I don't really know what's going on dash. Where are your manners? Her voice takes on a strong tone of offense. God, boys, she grumbles. I recoil, mind reeling. Is she a villain trying to kill me or a teenage girl being this? How am I supposed to respond, offensively? Is this just a petty criminal? As the gears work in my head, she slowly stands upright, crossing her arms and narrowing her eyes. Don't get involved in this, little bug. It's not your fight. She calls, her tone suddenly heavy, the playful and childish energy evaporating in the musty air. I hear a scuffle of feet and quickly find that her dark outline is gone. I whip my head around, straining to see whatever I can and groaning in frustration when I find no further trace of the strange girl. My body has relaxed, the threat gone for now, but something deep in my chest is raising nagging suspicions left and right. What the hell was that? The entire venture home I find myself glancing over my shoulder, even in midair, to make sure I'm not being followed. Maybe I'm paranoid, but I even swing around to random areas just in case I'm being trailed, taking an extra 15 minutes patrolling to be safe. That place should have been empty. It was untouched, undisturbed, and absolutely should have been a ghost town. But there was someone there. Maybe it was just a middle school girl doing a dare, exploring? Then why was she so cryptic, so quick? Aside from that, she literally tried to freaking kill me. How do I rationalize that? But she clearly wasn't that committed, because she ran away on her own. I didn't threaten her or even chase her, she just gave me that cryptic warning and bolted. This isn't your fight. What fight? Whose fight is it if not mine? Who the hell even is that girl? I groan, digging my nails into my palms as I towel dry my hair. I had to wash off the grime from that place, even though I barely touched anything. I felt spiritually tainted, if you will. Maybe the dead souls from the accident haunt the warehouse. Maybe that girl was a ghost and I'm just a psychic medium as well as a mutated anomaly. Joy. I flop into bed, pulling my sheets up to my shoulders and snuggling my old All Might plush before opening up my search browser and slowly typing in League of Villains. Oops, typo. League of Villains. Unsurprisingly, there is very limited information. A few sparse news articles and reports of missing policemen, loosely tied to this mystery gang that nobody is really sure truly exists. There are so many holes in the information, like someone's gone through and hand-plucked the key details. What SCKS is that it's like I'm missing so many pieces of the puzzle, but despite all this evidence, I'm certain the puzzle exists. If I had gone into that warehouse tonight and found absolutely nothing, I could accept the idea that it's just rumors. But I spoke to someone I know I did. I'm not imagining it, and there's no way it's unrelated to whatever the League of Villains is. I wonder if I could get Shoto to snoop around with his dad and see if he can't get any more solid info? I'd normally feel bad for exploiting my friends like that, but Shoto will take any excuse to PSS his dad off, so I'm not too concerned. After 20 minutes of pointless digging, I toss my phone onto my nightstand with a sigh and roll onto my back, staring at the faded green stars that glow down on me. What if that ghost girl was right? Maybe I should just drop it and choose my battles. I'm busy without all this, and the whole Spider-Man gimmick is hard enough without being an investigator and detective on top of it all. Oh, who am I kidding? In what world am I gonna drop something this intriguing? I hate feeling in the dark, like there's something to be known that I just can't quite reach. I'll figure this stupid gang out if it's the last thing I do. Okay, that might be a bit dramatic, but the point still stands. Shoto Todoroki. 11:37 p.m. St. Midoriya. Yeah? See, I want to go investigate that warehouse. The one Kyoko was telling us about at lunch the other day. I am what? Why would you do that? Don't YK how dangerous that area is? St, my dad's being weird about it. St, he won't discuss anything about that League of Villains group while I'm there. St, usually he doesn't care, since the BSTRD wants me to get involved with police work. St, but now he won't even answer my questions about it. Have you considered that maybe it doesn't really exist? St, he was talking about it when he didn't think I was listening, and the old power plant came up. Something has to be there. I really don't think that's a good idea. There could be squatters in there. St, I have a taser. St, multiple actually, I can lend you one. Why do you have multiple tasers? Actually NVM. I still just think this is a reckless thing to do just to get at your dad. St, I'm going either way. I was inviting you because you like true crime and all that weird stuff. St, tomorrow after school. If you have to go then I'll tag along. Bring the tasers. I gnaw on my lip, lying on my belly in bed and sighing at my phone. I wish he'd just take a hint and avoid that place. I have no clue if that creepy girl will be there again. It's been almost a week since I went, but you never know. And there really could be squatters. If he's gonna be there no matter what, I kind of have to tag along just in case. I really don't want to be back there if I'm being honest. The whole thing makes my spine tingle and the hairs on my arms raise up, but I can't just let him walk into a potentially dangerous situation on his own. No matter how many tasers he has, he's helpless if someone throws knives at him long range. And again, there could be squatters. One time I was patrolling around downtown following a purse snatcher and I got jumped by a homeless woman who was high off her rocker. That was the first time I got sliced with a blade. I got a tetanus shot the next day, just to be safe. Izuku, please, Kaminari wails, you've got to help me. I've failed chemistry all 3 years I've had to take it, I can't flunk out. Please help me study. He pleads from his knees, tugging on the hem of my sweater like I'm supposed to spare his life or something. I stare down at him with wide eyes, mildly embarrassed that he's making a scene in the middle of passing PRD. Sure, fine, okay? I agree, prying his fingers off my clothes and yanking him upright, only if you stop yelling. I mutter. He grins triumphantly, leaning against the locker beside mine while I rummage around for my laptop charger. Great. How's tonight after school work? He proposes. I sigh, yanking the tangled cord out of my mess of a locker and slamming it shut. Can't tonight, I have plans. I hum, opening my phone to check my calendar. When I glance up, I find the blonde wiggling his eyebrows suggestively. I scowl and roll my eyes. Not those kinds of plans, you nosy weirdo. I groan, shoving his shoulder as we walk through the crowded halls to our only shared class, psychology. Not what kind of plans? A gruff voice calls from behind us. I tense up as Denki turns in excitement, loudly clapping hands with who I can only assume is Kaken. Hey Baku bro. He greets eagerly. I keep my gaze stiffly forward, slowing my pace to keep up with them and softly grimacing at the familiar feeling of those scalding hot eyes on the back of my head. Ugh, my curls are fed up today. I self-consciously reach back and attempt to smooth down the thick, stubborn mess, failing miserably and stuffing my hands into my pockets in defeat. You said, not those kinds of plans, he presses, still looming behind me. Not what kind of plans? I gulp loudly, opening and closing my mouth for a few seconds and wanting to fall 6 feet into the ground. Why am I at a miraculous loss for words, now of all times? Oh, Midoriya's got a hot date tonight. Denki hoots, punching my shoulder playfully. I recoil, eyeing him in utter betrayal. Didn't I just tell him it's not like that? I still can't seem to find my voice, slowly turning my head to see Kaken's brow quirked in mild intrigue, his eyes giving me a quick once-over as if he's seeing me in a new light. About DMN time. He smirks. My jaw drops and I halt in place, standing firm when he smacks into me roughly from the unexpected stop. For the record, I've been on dates before. I start, crossing my arms defensively and glaring at both blondes, but I do not have any date tonight, not that it's any of your concern if I did. I snap. The corners of Kaken's lips twitch upwards, as if he's almost amused, his overall expression very mixed and confusing, while Kaminari just sighs dejectedly and pats my shoulder, shaking his head like he's my dad and I just shot an air ball at team tryouts. One day, young one, you will find love like the rest of us. He consoles me. I smack him away with offense written across my face, huffing in exasperation as we begin walking through the horde of teenagers again. You're the only one here in a relationship, idiot. Kaken chimes in, yanking on a fluffy tuft of Denki's hair. My eyes slide over to him, a small smile playing on my lips while Kaminari yelps in shock, leaning away from the teasing tug. Kaken's been confessed to more times than I can count, which is only mildly shocking. I mean, he's a child model for his parents' clothing brand, one of the most attractive and successful teens in the city, borderline famous, all the things that draw girls in. The only reason the whole school isn't at his beck and call is that abrasive attitude of his. He's gotten a lot better since freshman year, don't get me wrong, but he's still snappy and dry with people he doesn't know, and the ones he does know too. He's a good guy, just very difficult to like before you really get to know him. Not that I know him super well anymore either way. We used to be super close, but after things got weird in middle school we've just never been the same. You could have been in so many relationships at this point, Cats, it's infuriating. Denki sighs, running his hands down his face like this genuinely distresses him. Kakens just shrugs, standing up straight and rolling his shoulders before fixing his spiky hair in a passing classroom window. Don't got time for that shit, honestly. He mumbles. Kaminari shoots me a "get a load of this guy" stare, dramatically face palming to showcase his disbelief. You're supposed to live a little in high school, dude, but you've had a stick up in your butt all 4 years. He throws an arm over Kaken's shoulders, pouting. The built blonde shrugs him off, rolling his eyes with a groan. Not all of us want to get whipped like you, airhead. Kaken quips back. I am not whipped. He gasps. I love my wife, is that so unfathomable? Kaminari cries, throwing his hands in the air in mock outrage. Kaken scowls and nudges him playfully, surprising me by turning his gaze onto mine next. For a few seconds he just stares, a conflicted, almost sour expression tightening his lips while I stare back with slightly furrowed brows and widened eyes. I heard that Auntie is dating All Might? He hums, quickly switching to picking at his cuticles in apparent disinterest. I quirk a brow at his curious use of such a familiar address for my mother, but move past it quickly. If anyone, Kaken will truly understand how absurd this whole thing is, so I'm glad they brought it up before I had to. Oh, God yes. I shout a little too loud. I walked in on them just chatting casually in my kitchen and nearly had a heart attack. I still can't believe it. I sigh, clutching at my shirt in demonstration. Kaken barks out a harsh laugh. No way. You got proof? He demands, nodding at my phone. I roll my eyes, unlocking it quickly and scrolling through my messages with my mom until I come across a sickeningly sweet image of Yagi and her cuddled up on my couch with big, genuine smiles. I shove it in Kaken's face with a smug expression, hand on my hip triumphantly. He snatches the device out of my hand, zooming in on the scrawny blonde actor's face and peering at the image for an unnecessarily long time. Jesus, that's really All Might? Rest in peace to his prime. He mutters, handing my phone back. I lightly shove at his arm in scolding, the first playful contact we've had in years, which is totally freaking me out, but I play it cool. That's rude, this man is a legend. Don't make me tell him you said that. I threaten. His eyes widen minusculely, betraying his slight worry through that nonchalant mask. Okay, I take it back. He raises his hands in mock surrender. Don't be a snitch, Deku. He glares at me spitefully. No promises, that's now blackmail. I will actually rock your sheet. We get to Kaken's classroom, where the two blonde boys smack hands again as a parting. I avoid his gaze awkwardly, unsure if I'm meant to say goodbye or later, nerd. The blonde calls casually over his shoulder. Before I even have a chance to say something back, he's disappeared into the class, leaving me slightly caught off guard. I stand there blinking like an idiot for a few moments, before Kaminari's voice unconsensually penetrates my ears. So, about your date later dash. I don't have AF date, Kaminari. Usual, Ms. Kiyama gives us the last 20 minutes of class after our lecture to relax and have free time. We had a particularly grueling session of notes on what causes energy and SXL attraction, which of course meant that half the guys in class kept giggling like middle schoolers in SSE Ed. It was irritating. To ease my cramping hands, caused by insanely fast-paced notes, I mindlessly scroll through social media. I mostly just get manga and comic edits, the occasional Love Island update, but at some point I lock onto a certain video where Spider-Man is mentioned by a familiar voice. A famous news reporter named Sekijiro can sometimes referred to as Vlad King in reference to Count Dracula for how cruelly he sinks his teeth into certain people, bashing them ruthlessly on live TV. My heart sinks as I listen to his spiel about me. A mysterious masked figure named Spider-Man has recently been gaining traction around Brooklyn for his so-called heroism. He spits my name like venom. What I'd call it is unchecked acts of violence in the name of perverted justice. Something needs to be done about this out-of-control vigilante, because in his most recent scandal, a man ended up with 2 broken wrists. I feel my eye twitch in irritation. He was kidnapping a child. God, people will twist anything to make me the bad guy. Also, I didn't even break both wrists, not that the public could or should know that. I rest my head down on my desk, setting my phone down and releasing it from my nearly shattering grip as I fight off tears of frustration. This is so stupid. I'm literally saving people from unimaginable things, and I'm still being targeted. If they really want someone to blame, they should be looking at the police force who've been lazing around for the last decade. No, I can't go there. My goal is to work with the cops, not make enemies out of them. I sigh, taking a few deep breaths and composing myself before lifting my head and glancing around. Denki is looking over at me curiously and I quickly swipe my fingers under my eyes. Sorry, it's allergy season. I sniff dramatically. Ugh, hate that for you, Mito. He shakes his head, patting my hair. Oh, by the way, you can come over next Monday night for a study session. I remind him. He lights up, fist pumping the air victoriously and drawing a glare from our moody teacher. He mumbles a meek sorry in her direction before turning to face me with a blinding grin. You're the best, Zuko, I owe you. He squeezes my hand in gratitude. I smile fondly at him. Denki can be kind of ditzy and out of touch at times, but he's sweeter than pie and one of the most eager, encouraging people I know. I like spending time with him when I get a chance. It's kind of recharging in a way. Normally I'd just let him come over on the weekend, but since today is Friday and I have this thing with Shoto later, I'm leaving myself breathing room. By the time class ends and it hits lunch, I genuinely consider skipping the cafeteria today. I just know that this whole Vlad King situation will be the talk of the hour, and I can't handle any more outright bashing. Even if it's not directed at me, it's directed at someone who is me undercover. In my escape attempt, I'm intercepted by Ochako and Mina and subsequently dragged along to the tables against my will. As expected, the instant we all get out of the lunch line and settle into our respective seating, the gossip begins. Have you guys seen that Vlad King spoke on the Spider-Man sheet? Jaira questions, munching on a bag of baby carrots. Sue nods eagerly, sipping a carton of chocolate milk. I told you guys that he was bad news dash. Let's not go that far. That old geezer is known for being a dramatic hater towards any slightly controversial character, Sue. Hatsum cuts her off, shooting me a concerned look which I subtly shrug off. That's true, he's never been the most reliable source of information. Shotohums. I dunno, I think all the things he said were relatively accurate. Momo chimes in, leaning against her boyfriend's shoulder. I smile softly as Mina rolls her eyes, fed up as usual with the pretentious tone lacing the power couple's words. Of course you did, princess. Ochako mutters sourly under her breath. Ochako has a certain grudge against Momo for reasons I can only assume involve how high on her horse she is. Momo Yaoyorozu is a wealthy student who got into this great school because her parents paid off the dean. That's not to say she isn't very smart and talented, but she didn't even have to prove those things before being allowed in. Ochako had to work really hard her whole life and even take out a small loan with her parents just to be considered. So while her dislike for Momo is amusing, it's generally petty and I try not to let it influence my view of the ponytailed girl. I think that Vlad is just reaching for anything to stay relevant like the miserable leech he is. Mina shrugs, chomping down a bite of pizza. Sue rolls her eyes, which honestly gets on my nerves. I know it's bothering me extra because I was already annoyed, but she's always so higher than thou and it's really hard to ignore her prejudiced passive aggressions. I tune out the rest of the hour, unable to handle the tense back and forth any longer. When the bell rings, Todoroki calls out for me and stops me rushing off to class. "We're still meeting up today?" he mumbles. I nod, the pit in my stomach deepening at the reminder. That's gonna be wildly stressful. But I already said I would. He smiles at me softly before releasing me to continue on my way. As I'm heading down the hall to my last PRD, walking quick as possible to avoid any more conversation, someone catches my arm. I turn around, prepared to snap in irritation for being caught up twice, but instead I'm met with concerned yellow eyes and sleek pink dreads. "Hey Mito," Hatsum mumbles, "you were looking kinda down earlier. You're not letting all these rumors and shit get to you, right?" She asks gently, arms slung around my shoulders. I gnaw my lip, shaking my head with a small sigh. I don't know. I mean, I know I shouldn't pay attention to it for the most part, but it's like I can't escape hearing about the evil chronicles of Spider-Man, one way or another. I frown, lines creasing my forehead. She twists her lips up to the side, burying her hand in my thick hair and ruffling it affectionately. "I know this is difficult, but you are a good hero, Izuku. It must suck to hear people you consider friends to hate on your, insect form. But try not to take it personal." She smiles at me gently. "They don't know that it's you they're talking about, and I'm sure that if they did they'd support Spider-Man instantly." She whispers animatedly, quiet enough so that I'm the only one who can hear her. I lean into her side hug a bit, grateful that I at least have May to lean on. It was hard at first when absolutely nobody knew my secret. I was truly alone and helpless. When I finally caved and told Hatsum, I was terrified she'd throw me out or tell the whole school, but she just asked a bunch of crazy questions about my powers and what caused them and if she could test my blood, before spending the whole night drawing up suit schematics with me. We weren't particularly close before that, acquainted through robotics and our friend group, but ever since I confided in her a few months ago, it's a little easier to bear this double life of sorts. Thank you, May, seriously. I really needed to hear that. After I get out of AP Lit, I find Todoroki waiting calmly outside for me. We greet each other with a nod and immediately start walking, dropping our bags off at his front door on our way downtown since it's on the way. On foot, it takes about an hour and a half to get to the warehouse compared to maybe 25 minutes swinging around as Spider-Man, but I have to endure it. There aren't any buses that stop down there anymore, and I can't just swing the both of us and reveal myself for petty convenience, so we're stuck walking. Once we get into true downtown, Shoto casually passes me a yellow taser. "This button on the side here activates it, but it's on safety so it doesn't go off in your pocket," he explains. "Just turn it on to active mode when we get inside." I eye it cautiously, glancing up at his unaffected expression with a bit of hesitation. "I still find it very odd that you have spare tasers casually lying around." I mutter, still tucking the device into my back pocket. He just shrugs, a smile tugging o' his mouth. For most of the walk, Shoto plays his Spotify since he's got premium, and we enjoy the silence. This is one of the many things I really like about Todoroki. He can enjoy company without constantly talking. I love Ochako, but she requires consistent conversation throughout the hangout to feel accomplished, whereas Shoto could just sit in the same room with you for a few minutes and call it bonding. By the time we arrive at the front doors of the building, the muggy sky is darkening and my sense of unease has doubled. Maybe it's in my head or maybe it's some new form of spidey sense telling me to run away and not look back, but like it or not we enter through the creaking double doors. Shoto doesn't mention the torn chains at the base of the door, removed by yours truly during his last visit a few days ago, just toes them casually out of the way. Despite my best efforts to relax, my body stays tense and on edge the entire way down the hall to the main reactor room. I can't help but glance over my shoulder and jump at every small noise, every rat running across our path or slight breeze fussing my hair. Shoto eyes me curiously but decides not to bring it up, stepping lithely over broken glass and dust bunnies and urging me to walk faster. As I start to head towards the main section of the warehouse where the blue tub reactors rest unused, his cold hand wraps around my wrist and jerks me down a hall to the left. I stifle a yelp of shock, allowing the dual-toned boy to drag me along. Where are we going? I whisper in confusion. He glances back at me and slows his pace to match mine. To the West Control Room, where the explosion that killed 5 people originated a few years back. He mumbles, trailing his fingers along the dusty wall. I tilt my head. I think I passed that room when I came here as Spider-Man. A section on the second floor looking down on the reactors, the glass viewing partition blown away and never replaced. The door was gone and the surrounding hallway and walls were scorched black, the tiling melted into twisted and dimpled plastic. I figured that nobody would want to hang around there, considering the morbidity in the air, but maybe it was worth looking into. You seem to know your way around this place pretty well, Shoto. I hum absent-mindedly, watching my step carefully to avoid crunching any glass. On my first visit here, I got lost like 5 times around these second-floor halls. His back tenses, and I look over to find him gnawing on his lip. It's rare to see Todoroki so conflicted and nervous-looking, so on edge. Is the energy of the place getting to him too? Used to hang around here a lot. I tilt my head, a small frown tugging on my lips. Oh, how come? You could only have been in, middle school at that point? Did you tag along with your dad when he came to check it out or something? I theorize. It doesn't really make sense to me to bring a middle schooler here, but based on what I've heard about the chief of police, he's not a very rational or caring father. The lines of sensible and dangerous probably blurred quite a bit when it comes to his children. Shoto huffs out a small, dry laugh, shaking his head. No, my brother is one of the people who died in the explosion here. He states in unsettling monotone. My eyes fly wide, head whipping to look at him in shock. What? How did I not know this? I mean, I knew his older brother had passed at some point, but he never liked to talk about it, and there were no records online aside from a vague obituary. I never thought to pry, but especially coming here, you'd think he'd let me know ahead of time what kind of history he had with this building. I am so sorry, I had no idea. Don't apologize, Midoriya, you didn't know, he smiles softly at me. Besides, that's not relevant to this. Just so happens to be the same spot. I think that's part of why NG is so reluctant to discuss this whole gang with me. He scratches his cheek in thought. I bite the inside of my cheek. I feel like this is something we should have talked about before coming here. Obviously if he's okay with it then I am too, but it must be hard coming back after all these years, with the explosion still so clear and the residuals not even cleaned up. It makes me sad. What was that like for you? If you don't mind talking about him. I asked gently, feeling bad for prying but being eaten alive by curiosity. He eyes me thoughtfully, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets and rolling his neck. Tuya was the eldest of us while I was the youngest, so we were never super close. He explains, I remember he and my old man never really got along. Always arguing and even getting into physical fights sometimes, the works. When I was 5, he moved out. We rarely heard from him, and I saw him maybe 3 times in the 3 years after he left. Each time he came around he looked worse than before, all beat up and emaciated. Dad said he'd gotten into drags and some dumb shit, that we weren't allowed to talk to him or let him in the house. He swallows loudly, a grimace spreading on his face. When we heard about the explosion, we didn't even know he'd been in it until they announced the dead victims on the news the next morning. I was 8. NG told all of us that Tuya had gotten a job there, that he'd been getting clean and he was trying to redeem himself. He was trying to be better. His voice cracks, sending a nauseous pit of sorrow into my stomach. He takes a few deep breaths, turning his head away to compose himself. I pretend not to hear the soft sniffles, not to notice how he wipes his face with his sleeve. I reach out and rub his back tenderly, our walk forward slowed to a sad shuffle. Anyways, I came around a lot while they were figuring out what went wrong, what caused the explosion. My dad was excited I took interest in one of his cases, but I was really just trying to feel close to my brother. I felt kind of responsible for what happened, since I didn't try to help him or even talk to him while he was struggling all that time. His lips quiver heartbreakingly. There were chalk markings of where all the bodies were found. They were all spread out in the same area. The firefighters said it seemed like they got blasted through the observation window, you know, that shattered one that overlooks the main space? I remember there were 4 outlines all close together, but one was far away on the other side of the reactors. After a lot of oddly confusing turns and twists that I never would have dared to take on my own and a very steep staircase, we finally make it to the room stained in black ash, the door long blown off its hinges, and I hesitate to follow the tall boy in. He stares out of the hole where the window used to be for a few seconds before pulling me inside. As I look around, I realize that this area is huge. It's hard to make out details in the distorted wreck of the blast site, but the remnants of medical tools and exam tables peek out through the ash and rubble, making this place seem more like a lab or medical office rather than a panel room. I return my attention to Shoto as he starts pointing to the wall on the other side of the dark warehouse, through the shattered window. That cat up there? The one that's got one side fallen down? There was a yellow tag on it, like 20 feet above where the one separate body outline was. His jaw clenches, and my stomach churns as I deduce where this is going. I wasn't allowed to listen while the cops and firefighters and all them talked about the details, but I overheard one of them telling my dad that Tuya was the closest to the blast, that he'd been flung all the way across, hit the catwalk, and fell onto the ground where it collapsed on top of him from how hard he hit it. Apparently he died a few minutes later from his injuries, but he might have been able to make it out had he not been pinned down. My whole face wrinkles in disbelief and horror, lips curling up as my mind searches for something to say. He leans forward onto the melted control panel, holding his hands together on the warped surface as he looks out onto the ancient blast site. Todoroki, you were just a kid, you barely even knew what was going on. There was nothing you could have done for him, it's not your fault. I mumble softly, hesitantly reaching out for his arm. He takes a few shaky deep breaths, allowing me to rub circles into his forearm despite usually disliking physical touch. I mean, I know that now. Logically, at least. I honestly just blame Enji as I get older, he chuckles dryly. In reality, he should have helped Tuya get into rehab or let us be his support system, but instead he shut my brother out and left him to drown by himself. He didn't even let us see him again while he was doing better. That's what really gets me. He glares down at his fingers. I nod in agreement. You're totally right. Your brother was clearly working to be healthier for you and your siblings. At that point your dad should have at least offered his help and support in some way. I hum sympathetically. He shrugs. I've thought about it over and over all these years, but the reality is I can't change what happened, no matter how much I dwell and agonize. Although, I can sure as hell remind my dad over and over just how badly he effed up. It's been 10 years since the explosion and I make sure to remind him weekly of what he did to my brother. He grins menacingly, the unfamiliar expression sending shivers down my spine. I fight off a smile at his unabashed malice, having no genuine opposition to his torturous hobby because despite how much I believe in redemption and second chances, Enji Todoroki made a mistake that he can never take back, one that destroyed his family and killed his son. I can't say I encourage that, but I also can't say I blame you. I shrug, patting his back. He takes a deep breath, letting it out in a loud sigh as he rolls his shoulders back and stands up straight. Sorry for dumping all that on you, it just kind of came out. He smiles sheepishly. I roll my eyes, waving him off. Who am I to judge? Plus I'm glad you felt comfortable enough to open up to me about this, Shoto. You can always talk to me, okay? He stiffly rests his hand on mine, making me beam with pride at his attempt towards affection. Okay. We start to poke around the room, lifting the crumbling rubble that's fallen from certain parts of the surroundings and yanking futilely on the remaining filing cabinets on the walls that must have been welded shut from the intensity of the flames. If I were alone, I could certainly just tear them open, but that would be a little too conspicuous. As we start to walk out to search other rooms, the familiar feeling of nearby danger jolts down to my toes, every hair on my body standing at attention, forcing me to instinctually dive to the ground while yanking a very shocked Todoroki down with me. Just before he opens his mouth to question me, I smack my hand over his lips and stare at him with a "please shut the f up" look. Moments later, the sound of lazy footsteps and low mumbles echo up to us through the window from the ground floor below. Todoroki's brows furrow, but he makes no move to shove me off as we both strain to listen. Garaki said he's almost got the electrical system fully rewired in the reactors, finally. A raspy, deep voice sighs. Yeah, that idiot's been taking forever to get this place where we need it, a different, more nasally voice replies. He's been hyper-paranoid since the cops have been lurking lately, and even more cautious after Toga claimed to see that Spider-Man guy poking around a few days ago. The voice grumbles, clearly irritated. The breath hitches in my throat, blood running cold at the mention of my alter ego. So Toga was that girl's name? She's somehow involved with these men? I don't give a shit, to be honest. We've been waiting long enough, he better step it up. The rough voice snaps. One of them chuckles, the noise drifting from left to right as they move through the ground floor. Be patient, Dobby, it'll all work out in the end. The other hums. My forehead crumples in concern at the threatening implication. Are they planning something here? What could they possibly want with this old place? That's not how life works, dingus. Life doesn't just give you what you want all because you assume it will. We need to be faster, especially now that we're being looked into. The one who is apparently Dobby says. What, you think that this bug boy will give us any trouble? The nasally voice muses absently. The other snorts, and while I'm a bit too terrified at the moment, usually I'd take offense to that. Oh please. That guy stops purse snatchers and saves treed kittens, the worst he'll do is get some webs stuck on my good jeans. I swallow a petty scoff, knowing that I shouldn't care what mysteriously ominous bad guys think of me when they've never had to face me before. I glance over at where Shoto is lying beside me, his brows furrowed in confusion as he listens to a more muted version of what I can hear. Sheet, I can't really stay and do reconnaissance while my civilian friend is in potentially immediate danger. I grit my teeth, there's too much loose debris on the ground in here for us to silently creep away. It would crunch under our feet and the echo in this giant place would definitely alert those strangers to our presence. I look around the long room we're in, seeing if maybe there's a clear pathway somewhere. Gotcha! There's a part of the ceiling in the back of the room that's got a few small, person-sized holes which I suspect were blown out during the big blast. They're pretty far away, but I could swing us over and avoid stepping on anything. But I'd have to reveal myself to Todoroki. I glance over at my best friend as he stares at the ceiling with a clenched jaw, body stiff with confusion and fear. Would he accept me? Would he tell on me? I really don't think so, especially considering that revealing my identity would only help his dad. But even if he would rat me out, I've got no other choice since the voices and footsteps are exiting the reactor room and slowly making their way through the maze that is this facility towards Shoto and I seek a breath through my teeth and grab onto the front of his shirt, staring at him seriously and leaning in to whisper in his ear. Please don't freak out, I promise I'll explain this all to you later, but we have no other option right now. I breathe. He stares at me like I just informed him a goose is the president, but nods slowly. I sigh in relief, steeling myself as I slowly have him stand up alongside me, calculating if the ceiling is high enough in here for me to swing straight across to the hole. I think it is. I crouch down in front of Shoto, waving him forward as a sign to climb on my back, and I hear him scoff. He clambers on slowly, arms tightening around my neck, and I try to remember this as potentially the last moment he and I are friends. I flick my wrist out to sling a web across the room onto the remaining roof beside the hole I'm aiming for, and yank on it hard to lift both of us into the air and all the way to the other side, landing softly on the wall and sticking onto it with my micro-hooked fingers. I slowly reach over, getting a good grip on the edge of the hole before easily heaving us both up and through it. Shoto starts to speak when we make it onto the fragile roof, but I shush him gently and sling another web onto a nearby billboard, continuing to fly us away from the sketchy downtown until we're back in our side of the city. The whole time my stomach is churning, checking over my shoulder repeatedly just to be sure they didn't notice and follow us, but when we finally land on the roof of a convenience store and he climbs down, I diligently turn to face him. His jaw is dropped wide, head shaking slightly like he's searching for words, and I almost giggle at the absurdity of it. He grabs my arm and closely examines my wrist, pressing on the small, almost invisible swell below the heel of my palm where my webs come out of, and yelping when a small burst of threads shoot onto his finger. So yeah, I'm Spider-Man. I mumble, scratching the back of my wind-blown curls and avoiding eye contact. No way, I didn't notice. He rolls his eyes. I shoot him a glare, still unsure what he's thinking. Well, number one, what the hell was that? Who were those people? He asks, running a hand through his split-colored hair in distress. I'm just as clueless as you are on that front. I shrug. He runs his hands down his face, cupping them around his mouth as his brows cast shadows over his eyes. Okay, well, it's FNG awesome that you're a literal superhero. He breathes, reaching out to shake my shoulders as if to get across the gravity of that fact. I smile, relief flooding through my body. Okay, good, he's not upset. I mean, I supported Spider-Man either way to make my dad mad, but now I can support him to support you and make my dad mad. He grins spitefully. I smirk with a slight head shake. Questionable reasoning, but I'll take it. I tease. We drop to the sidewalk below the shop and casually walk, chatting under our breaths as we make our way back to Shoto's place. So, since you're probably obsessively looking into whatever that was, do you want me to look through my dad's files for a Dobby or Garaki? He hums softly. I scowl, taking minor offense to the implication that I have hyperfixation issues. That would be great, actually. I don't want to get you in trouble though, Dash. Shut up, I literally don't care. He cuts me off, knocking his shoulder against mine. I shrug in acceptance. Who am I to decline such helpful information? Honestly, no matter how much I'd rather keep my friends out of all this, having someone this close to me know my deepest secret and be able to hook me up with confidential information on villains I'm tracking is kind of awesome. So, how'd it happen? Were you just born half spider? He asks stupidly. I briefly stare at him with a dumbfounded, slightly disappointed look. First of all, I'm not half spider. Second, I got bit by some weird super arachnid at Shimura Labs on that field trip at the start of the year. Remember how I wandered off on my own? Yeah, during that, and that bite re-engineered my DNA and mutated my genes to make me. I scratch my chin, searching for a proper term. Half spider. He provides. I shoot him a glare, mad that I've got no better way to describe it. Sure, whatever, I grumble, waving him off. The weird thing is, Shimura Labs is supposed to be a fully non-confidential corporation. All the work they do is supposed to be available to the public. I couldn't find anything in their records about experimental spiders or insects, though, and it's got me thinking that they were doing something they shouldn't have been doing. Maybe I should have just asked the tour guide about it while we were there, but I was scared they'd take me into custody and run experiments and probe me or something. Dash. Okay, I got it. He reaches over to pinch my lips shut with his thumb and pointer finger. I smack him away and massage my lips with a pout, sighing dramatically. Whatever, you just hate me, I glower. He rolls his eyes as we walk up to the front door of his house, both picking up our bags from the doorstep. No, you just talk too much. He grins teasingly. I'll let you know if I find anything on that guy they mentioned tomorrow at school, okay? He confirms. I nod sternly, quickly passing his taser back to him. I owe you one. Actually, I owe you like 10 or something. I sigh dejectedly. He smirks. I'll be collecting on that, Spider-Man. He whispers before walking inside. The instant Shoto closes his door and locks it, I've taken off down the street towards my own house, gritting my teeth in irritation that I can't just swing there. I already used my webs without my mask once today, and even if nobody saw me, I'd rather not try it again. After 10 minutes of borderline sprinting, I reach the lobby of my apartment, bolting up the stairs and fumbling my key for a few moments before I burst inside. My mom let me know earlier today that she'd be home late, probably on a date with FING All Might, so I don't worry about my excessive noise. I throw my bag onto the floor in my room and sit anticlimactically in my desk chair as I wait for my PC to power on. Stupid, old piece of junk. Once I log in, my fingers fly across the keyboard to type the name, Toga, into the search bar. It sounds like a last name, but I don't think it's too common, so hopefully something useful comes up. I scroll through the first few results, some small personal social media accounts and such, until I come across an obituary. It piques my interest and I click on the link. Toga Himiko, age 14 at the time of her death, passed on October 16th after sustaining massive blood loss. I frown. This was 3 years ago, so whoever she was would be around 17 years old now. There's no photo attached or any mention of her family, but the description seems to match up with her current age. The only question is, why is this girl considered dead? Is it a coincidence? There are no other female Togas coming up on this search, so this is my only lead. I favorite the tab to browse again later and shut off my computer in defeat. Hopefully Todoroki has more luck in his father's files, because this whole thing is making me feel off. I have no clue how it's all connected or what they're planning, but clearly something's going on and I really want to know what.